Of course, again, we're deceived by words, aren't we? You see, the white man deceives his thievery behind the word what? War. He deceives the fact that he runs the greatest mafia operation in the world behind the words national interest. You see, and a lot of us are caught up with the words. And he deceives the fact that South America and Central America is his territory, the United States territory, and it's our territory, and we have the right to exploit it any way we feel like it. And the Russians and everybody else better what? Stay out. And if you try to get in our special territory, and never mind what the people have to say about it. They don't have a damn thing to say about it. You know, it doesn't matter what the Central America, South, it doesn't matter that the Nicaraguans want to, elect the Sandinistas, or that the Chileans wanted to put Allende in office, or that the Grenadians wanted to put, in the office. No, this is our territory. The people have nothing to say. How different is that then from the crack dealer who says, South Queens, this is what? Our territory, and everybody else stays out. And the people say, we don't want any of you in it. Shut up, you ain't got nothing to say about it. And if you object, we're going to do what? Get you. But you see, we're willing to see the criminality there and the gangsterism there. But we don't see the criminality and gangsterism, you see, in this country saying Central and South America is what? Our sphere of influence. What do you mean sphere of influence? You see, and we collect from this group of people, and we make them pay what? Protection. And those people who don't agree with what we are doing, we're going to put an insurrectionary army in there and destroy them. Or as in Panama, we'll go in and do it ourselves. And this is what it's about. And what do they mean by national interests? Or like as what's his name says, Bush, our way of what? Life. The life to which we have become what? Accustomed. Which requires that we stay a subordinated people. And he's letting then Saddam Hussein know that we're used to living it up, man. Having more than we can eat. Just consuming all the world's resources and so forth. But I'd be damned if we're going to let you have control of your own resources, man. No way. We're not going to do it. And we're going to have to fight you to do it. And on a certain basic level, this is in part what manhood and peoplehood is about. Are the people to voluntarily starve and die? Or are the men to go out and get what is needed for the survival of their people? Or are we going to let another people come in and take everything we have so that our children can starve and die? Or are the men going to stand up and defend what they have? This is part of what manhood is about, you understand? And this is why the man has to be especially psyched up and indoctrinated and trained. This is why manhood is not a mere chauvinistic definition. It is a social definition. It is supremely related to the people and to the survival of a people. It is not merely a haughty game that men play. In fact, it's a game that many men wish they didn't have to play. But they recognize that they must play it. Because a part of manhood also is a sense of duty. And a part of manhood is the willingness to sacrifice oneself in the interest of one's people and in the interest of one's folk. And that requires the stamina and the skill and the commitment and the duty and the willingness to put up with a lot of nonsense and hardship and so forth to see that that is the case. And that requires then the training of boys, and they have no choice about it. They must be set up and trained to do it, because they not only live for themselves, they must live for the race and live for the group. Because without the race and without the group, there is no self. And this requires certain disciplines, then you see. Now, one of the ones I recommend that you read about here is the Sambaru that Gilmore talks about here, and their image of what it means to be a man, to be a worthy man, you see, with the heavy emphasis on economic self-sufficiency and productivity. You have to recognize that in the older systems, the definition of manhood was tied up with productivity. With this Sambaru, a man is a man that owns something, that is not working for another man. That's the ideal. As I ask many of our young men today, how can you accept the definition that a man means to be independent and then see the ultimate goal of your life as working for a white man? It's a contradiction. It's a contradiction. You cannot see that as the end point of your life if you define manhood in terms of independence. If you define manhood in terms of what? Self-control, self-determination. You can't do it. And then fall subject to the white man. That's why the very definition of yourself as a man requires the overthrow of the white man in this world today. You cannot be a full man and be subject to rulership by white men. That's a contradiction in terms. That's why you got to move the black boy beyond going to school just for jobs. He's going to school to remove this white man as his boss. Understand? Right. One of the major reasons why your children suffer in these schools is because we do not have transcendent goals. Goals that move beyond the individual's own desires and wishes. Understand? Education is a transcendent goal. It transcends the individual in that education is concerned ultimately with this ability of a people to survive and a transmitting to the next generation of what it takes to survive. You see? And therefore the education of the individual just does not stop with himself. It moves beyond the self. But when you make the end point of the education of your children merely jobs, then it becomes very difficult for you to motivate the child and understand why that child is really going to school, because it doesn't move beyond this. And of course, you see, the system likes to keep us at this point. There must be a transcendent reason that we're here. To own property. Now, this group of people, the Sambaru, depend on cattle for their wealth. In fact, cattle is wealth. Goats, a few donkeys, and so forth, but mainly cattle. It's liquid capital. It is the basis of their prestige, the basis of their influence. And so, therefore, to be called a worthy elder or worthy man is to own and control one's own piece of land, or to control one's own herd, and to be no one's servant. This is the ideal of manhood for this group. This may involve then their having to rustle that cattle from some other people, because a young boy has got to establish himself as a man. That may involve taking back from other people. I know that hurts some of our moral sensitivities. But if it does hurt your moral sensitivity, remember where you got your morality from. Yeah. And who taught you your morality? It's interesting to note that when you look at the black politicians, you hear this word, non-threatening politician. That's one of those new terms, right? Non-threatening. In other words, we will elect Negro politicians who don't threaten white folk and frighten white folk. So Dinkins and Wilder and Rice and and they got a guy here elected here, conservative, up there in Connecticut somewhere, Republican or something, right? Andrew Young, they're talking about the non-threatening black politician. Isn't that interesting? Non-threatening. And you know what that means. And what I quoted to you a while ago is a result of non-threatening black politicians and judges, black men and black people being destroyed. A man must be threatening, particularly to his enemies. If you don't frighten the enemies of the race, then the enemies are going to come in and take advantage of the race. And he must learn then to display his capacity to defend to the death his group and his principles and his people. And if possible, to frighten away his rivals and to frighten away those who threaten him. So anytime you get a group talking about electing non-threatening, black men, you're getting a group that's getting ready to be raped and taken. And that's one of the reasons why we have this parallelism between black men going to jail and the kind of problem we have and the election of non-threatening black politicians. Because no one is afraid to mess with their people and to deal with their people. So then we see then in the image of the Sambaru man that he is not only hard and is not only steadfast in terms of his own definition of manhood, but his steadfastness is an economical phenomenon as well, you see. Because in that manhood definition is productivity. In order to be a man, you must grow more cattle. You see, in order to be a man, you must conquer more territory and build yourself a farm or a ranch or this and that. Now, this is not only a building for that man as an individual. That is a building for whom? For his family, for his group. You see, so his role of manhood not only then is a chauvinistic definition of self, it is an economic, productive definition of self. Now, what would happen if we as black men would say, in order to be a man, we must own the economic systems of our neighborhood? That I don't feel like we are full men when we let Korean men, Arab men, and all of these white men and other people stay in the midst of our people and take the wealth of our people. How can we look ourselves in the eye and say that we are men? That's why, yes, exactly my point. Turn right around, that's why you're getting people knocking women around and doing a lot of the things and knocking each other around. Because when you're afraid to face your enemy and deal with your enemy and define your manhood as a defeat of your enemy, then you're thrown back on yourself. And a great deal of black-on-black violence, whether it's black men against black men, or black men against white men, or black men against women, or black men against themselves in terms of destructive habits, such as addictions, it is a result of what? People who have surrendered to a certain cowardice and who have given up the thought that they can overthrow the white man and his rule, and have permitted themselves to fall in a state of despair and fear, and therefore now seek to soothe their despair and hurt masculine pride by then getting inebriated and high and finishing themselves off for the enemy, or overcompensating and destroying women and children in the same way, you see. So I hope you can begin to see that manhood involves much more than chauvinism, ladies and gentlemen. Am I able to get through here? Now, not only then, in order for the Sambaru to be a man, he must engage in self-denial. And that's a part of the deal too. One of the things the Sambaru boy does, at a certain point, he stands before his mother's and the women quarters and swears that from this point on, he will not eat any food seen by the married woman. What is he saying? He's not going to eat any more of his mother's food. He's not going to eat any more of the food given by women. That means he hates women? Not at all. He's saying now, I'm getting ready to move from the position of consumer and taker into the position of what? Producer. You see? And no matter how tempting the food is, and no matter how, wonderful it is, and some of this food is their natural food and the food that they love very much, I'm going to deny myself this until I achieve the ability and the capacity to make it for myself, and now to feed my mother, other than being what? Fed by her. A whole different reversal. And that is a part of the manhood ritual. To move a boy who is a sucker of milk and eating at mother's breast and so forth, to move him into the role as producer. You see, we used to have that in our society too in the old days. And you used to hear a guy when he was young say, man, the first thing I'm going to do when I start making money is buy my mama a house. You don't hear that much anymore, do you? And I'm going to set my mama up, and I'm going to make her stop working, and the whole deal. We don't hear that, but I'm going to mama and see if I get something to eat. A whole different ethos going on here. And yet, he is an American, Different thing. A part of that ceremony of the Samburu and of the Maasai is that the boy cannot be a man until he kills his first oxen. And then he cuts that oxen and gives the biggest piece to his mother, you see. And what is he symbolizing again? I am now what? The producer and the provider. So as I shall show you later, you see, manhood, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, is a nurturing definition. Men are nurturers and givers to their society. It is only in this deteriorated definition of what it means to be a man, and only when we have let this oppression separate us from our tradition, that our men continue to be consumers and takers. It is only the absence of the knowledge of our culture that has permitted us to deteriorate to the point where we are today, you see, and taking in uncritically feminist philosophy to the point where we doubt and we're ashamed to say that we are men. You see, we got to get out of that. His worthiness comes not only from accumulating, and note this thing about the manhood here that's prevalent throughout many African systems. His worthiness comes not only from accumulating, but from lavish gifting during feasts. Manhood or masculinity is a kind of moral, invisible hand that guides the activities of self-respecting individuals toward the collective end of capital accumulation. What do we mean here? In other words, if you really want to be a big man, after you accumulate this property and the cattle and so forth, what do? You give it back. You give a big feast. You just feed people, you see. And the more you feed, and one of the things you really do is you be the one who eat the least at your feast. And the more you're able to make people eat more, and the less you eat, the more of a man you are, you see. And this is why you teach these boys, they're not going to eat until they kill their own cattle. And if they starve, so be it. What can I tell you? Because we can't afford you. You see, you demonstrate then your ability as a producer, you see. You demonstrate your ability to enter into self-denial, not because it, quote unquote, just makes you a man, but in making you a man, you feed the nation and you feed the people. This black man, you see, has been duped by this religion into hating money and hating wealth. And I try to tell black people, we are wealth-producing people. Where do we get this thing here of identifying with poverty? Where do we get this craziness of seeing poorness and goodness as the same thing? And seeing virtue in poverty? We have to get it from the other people. It doesn't make any sense. There's no greatness in being poor and poverty-stricken. In fact, there's great sin that flows out of poverty. Yeah. Look who hits you over the head. Rich folk? Are they the ones mugging you out here? No, poverty is not automatically virtue. But of course, you see, the other people, in order to rob us and keep us poor, makes us associate virtue and poverty, you see. And somehow we are not supposed to make money. You got a bunch of jokers around here, black people are not good accountants. Give it to the Jews. They know what to do with money. How the hell the Jews can out-count money more than you? Money is money. That's all. The Jew doesn't have any greater facility with money than you have. But I told you here some lectures ago, right, that the white man is no better manager of business than we are. What is his advantage? He only makes you what? Pay for his mistakes. Do you remember when I told you that? Back some time ago? Hasn't the S&L crisis shown you that? White man mismanaging the economy, destroying the systems, destroying the banks. Are they in jail? Are they paying back? No, we're going to pay for that. We're going to pay for that. But yet we have this myth, that they are better managers of business, that they're this and they're that, because we don't take time to see, because we have not received an African-centered education that can permit us to look through this nonsense and see what is right in front of our eyes. And we see the mismanagement of the economy all the time. Total mismanagement. Screwing up. But what happens? Well, we screwed it up this time. We're sorry, we got to put you off the job. Yeah, we got to furlough you. We got to make you pay more taxes. This is the game. This is what the game is about. No calling into question the leadership of the white male as a business person or financial person at all. In fact, we think he's even great now that he sits up and outlines how many jobs must be lost in the city and how many departments. He talks percentages and so forth, not realizing he's covering up his what? His failures. Oh, but isn't he magnificent the way he lays out how many folk got to be fired and destroyed? Wow, I wonder if a black man could do that. Craziness. But that's the result of power. You make other people pay for your mistakes. And that's the result of weakness. You pay for the mistakes of others. And that's the way the game is set up. That's the reality of life, ladies and gentlemen. It's not pretty, but that's what it's about. That's why a man doesn't worry about being what? Pretty. He has to deal with the realities and the harsh realities that exist out here. And those realities are not beautiful. And therefore he doesn't spend all his time primping and going through all of the changes, because his duty lies elsewhere. And he doesn't get his way in the world through seduction and through the other game. He gets his way in the world through what? Power. Power and strength. The black man has been feminized by the white man. Yeah, very much so. Integrationism is a feminist orientation. Let us marry the white man. Let us and the white man be as one. And once he sees that I'm his brother, that we are the same, there's no difference between us, even though we're black or 7 midnights. You can't see the difference. You can't see the difference. You're not supposed to see that. And of course, being one, he will now give all of his share his wealth. That's the craziness that animates the assimilationist idea. Oh, don't worry about building a system yourself. Don't worry about constructing an economic system, a political system, and so forth. No, just marry the white man and you got it. It comes with the whole time. Don't worry about having to fight and struggle to the death with this other person. Just marry them. Get them to like you. Get them to love you. Get them to see you as one with themselves. And you got it made. So then when you get that attitude, all you got to do is make yourself likable. You see? And you seduce them. You make them feel guilty. Ain't you sorry what you did to us? We get into that. Oh, look at all this slavery you put us through. We're weak and broken. Don't you feel sorry? Give us something for it. Yeah. Yeah. It ain't gonna work that way.
It was founded 20 years ago to help the new merchants with the various problems associated with owning a retail business in New York City. Starting with only 30 members, the association has expanded to over 1,000. A key element of that strategy has been to share ideas and concepts which led to the revitalization of their industry. Not being educated for whom? Other folk. Not being educated to solve whose problems? Other folks' problems are whose? Your problem. But the Negro think he is really being educated when he can tell other ethnic groups how to solve their problem, but he can't solve his own. In fact, that's why he goes to school, to solve other people's problems. And he's called brilliant and smart when he can solve other people's problems, but he cannot use his own intelligence to resolve his own community's problems. The association also guides members through the gauntlet of problems they frequently encounter when operating in a foreign business culture. Interesting. I've told black people for years, you must see this business culture, an American business culture, as a fight culture. Stop talking about standard business practice. These are white folks' business practices. Designed to meet their needs based on their history, their experience. And when you practice them, if you practice their practices, you can only do what? Support them. There's no such thing as a standard business practice. There's no such thing as I've said before, as standard education. You understand? There's an education that meets your needs. There's an education that advances your interests. There's education based on your history, based on your psychology, based on your values, based on your goals, which are not the same as other people's history, psychology, and goals. And therefore, when you get an education that is not fitted to your own realities, it is going to work against you and destroy you. But this kind of lack of knowledge is hidden behind the concept standard education, standard business practices. No such animal. They didn't come to learn standard education, standard business practices. They practiced the kind of business that was relevant to their own reality as a people, relevant to their history and their psychology and their culture and their tradition. And it worked. But those of us pretending to be white, acting like white, have only succeeded in maintaining our separation and degradation as a people. I told people years ago, there's no such thing as a black bank, but you went on over there and you built up Freedom National to get yourself insulted. And every year it sat on that street. For every year it sat on that street, we got additional non-black businesses on it. And yet you were deceived into thinking that that bank sitting on that street would advance black economic interests. It could not. If you look at the reality of the American economic system, if you came to understand the nature of the American banking system, if you came to understand the nature of our economic situation, you would recognize that a commercial federal bank is the most inappropriate institution for advancing a group's economic interests. You put your monies in there and financed the moving of jobs out of New York City. You put your money in these banks and you finance building of highways and sewers and suburbs and moving jobs and factories into the South or out of the country completely. Let me tell you. Because the bank just doesn't hold your money. It must invest the money. It must lend the money. And what does it do? If there are no businesses in your own community to which a bank can lend money, then it has to invest its funds into someone else's businesses and someone else's assets. Yes, we're bringing it in here. Which means then the African American community, because it misunderstood its own economic reality, supported the reality of other people and led to its downfall. I just want to put one more thing here so we can begin to get some sense of what we're dealing with, and I'll be through it right after this one. New York Times, March 22nd, 1993. You know, I talk about education. This society can only brag about how it has freedom of information because it has succeeded in destroying black people's minds. This is a society that does not want to hide what it does to very few, because it doesn't. Every means by which it manipulates and controls and dominates is published right in front of your eyes. That's why our children cannot learn to read and must not learn to read. Because you know, ladies and gentlemen, if black people really learn to read well and acted on the knowledge that's available to us, you would get censorship in America. They would hide knowledge from you. The only way then that this country does not hide knowledge from us is make sure that we take no interest in reading, that we run from books, we run from papers, we run from libraries. We see reading as unmanly. You see, we get headaches when we read. We get sleepy. We see it almost as un-African. We start even making excuses for ourselves. Our thought is non-linear. While there's we got a lot of that stuff too. People hiding things. We are intuitive people. Yeah, right. Just means you don't want to do the hard work of reading and thinking. You want to sit around and guesstimate and estimate and all these other things instead of grasping onto reality and being precise in what you're doing. Speaking new ties and clouds, Korean grocers joined voices. The Korean Grocers Association of New York had a surprising guest give the invitation at its annual awards meeting last month. The Reverend Al Sharpton. Not only that, they have also sponsored spots on black radio stations honoring heroes like Thurgood Marshall. The Korean Producer Association ran a scholarship program for black minority students in conjunction with the Amsterdam News. Got a picture right here. They're sending 2 colored girls to Korea over there. President of the Korean Association of Greater New York provides last-minute tips on life in Seoul, Korea. Life in America, tips on life in America, man. To 3 young students, black people, sit here. Mary Griffith, Elizabeth Ortiz, and Joanna Evans, shortly before they left earlier this month for studies in the Asian capital on a scholarship program established 2 years ago by Trinity Heat University for African American students. A total of 100 scholarships were given to studies on the undergraduate and graduate level. Under the arrangement, students are to be sent in groups of 20 over a 5-year period. Come on. Come on. Typical neo-colonial game, typical brainwashing game, and how cheaply we can be bought as a people. Giving away millions and billions of dollars for a few stupid scholarships, and for some people who are going to come back and convince us that it's in our interest to support people who exploit us. Yes. And I see them buying the Amsterdam News. Almost every week there's some scholarship being handed out to black students. On a range of issues, Korean business owners in New York are using the strength of their numbers to try to increase their political influence and improve their business opportunities. And perhaps most important, mend their bitter relation with other ethnic groups. 12 years ago, what do you do first? You take the economic together first. There is no power without economic power. Negroes thought power was in voting. Power is not in voting. Power is in money. Power is having control over major resources. And he lets the group that's smart get this first, and then it moves into the political arena, not the other way around.
I've urged black professionals to take up the banner and take up the war of redefinition. That as long as we operate within the definitions of Europeans, that we will be subject to their determination of our behavior. I've talked often about European constants. That is, certain European programs that have not changed since we first met the European and which are not intended to change. That the superficial changes that we are now experiencing are only brought into being to maintain the constancies. That we must develop the ability to look beyond the superficial changes and see the constancies being maintained by those changes. We are getting ready to elect an African mayor of this city. But beware, this change is still another version of neocolonialism. Its intention is ultimately to put a black face on white power. You must recognize the intention ultimately for the European is not to give up his power. He may even force integration upon his people. He may even elect our people to offices and so forth. Because in the good old neo-colonialist fashion, these people elected to offices are a means by which the ultimate economic, political, social, and other controls are maintained. So we must not see these changes as substantial and basic changes. I'm not advising you not to vote and not to put our African into office, but let us not be deceived. During this Black History Month, I often advise our people that while it is good and wonderful and fitting to celebrate our heroes and to celebrate great events in our past, we must also use this time to meditate upon the lessons taught by those events and by those heroes. It will do us very little good to build up a pride as a result of looking at these heroes and as a result of looking at our great accomplishments if we truly do not learn the lessons of those events and accomplishments. We must recognize that in a way we are now undergoing a second Reconstruction period. That this is not the first time we have been down this road in America. Those of you, of course, who read Lerone Bennett's Black Power USA are familiar with that fact. I've often noted how Bennett did not finish that book. Of course, he then talked about what? Black mayors, black lieutenant governors, black legislatures, black voting power, black corporate leaders, black men in the Senate, black men in the Congress. And yet, in the 1870s, when Andrew Johnson changed his program, when the Supreme Court changed its program, our people were disenfranchised, and it took us 100 years to get back to the same point that we were at then. Which means then that a people who can give are people who can take. And simply because we may be voting in a black mayor doesn't say that this is going to go on forever and ever. We voted him in before. And because we did not change the basic power relationship between ourselves and the Europeans, we were disenfranchised. In this context, I often warn that we are not protected by laws. We are not protected by courts. We are not protected by presidential mandates. They are but words on paper. Words cannot protect your interests. The law is only as strong as those who enforce it. And the laws that now so-called protect us are written by our enemies and enforced by our enemies. And the day that they decide that they will not enforce them, the law will be null and void, and they will remain neutral on the books. So that the ultimate thing then is not laws, not civil rights laws and rules, not fair housing laws and rules. I've told you again and again that if one day the European has to choose between feeding his child and your child, I don't give a damn what law is on the books. He's going to feed his first. And you may cite laws and rules, but the reality will be the one with the most power is going to be the one that rules under those circumstances. So that the ultimate goal for African people then is not the placing of laws on books, nor even the election of mayors and governors, but ultimately the building of power so that we can prevent those who would wish to destroy us from doing so, regardless of the laws they may write, regardless of the laws they may enforce or not enforce.